I was just looking up years converted to minutes right now just to see like how many minutes has it been since I was born? And it's been yeah.
Years converted to minutes. It's funny that you mentioned that because actually earlier today I was trying to, um, spoiler alert if you haven't seen The Office, when they sing Michael's "Going Away," when they sing like the kind of "Going Away" song to him, they're like, what is it, 9,986,000 minutes, and I'm like, how many years was this guy working at this
900
paper
million?
company? And then it's 9,986,000 minutes. And then I actually did quick math, and I just pulled out my phone and did that. I think it was about like, I think, what is it, like
I'll plug it
17
in right
something or
now. So for
19
24
years.
years, it's for me it's been 126 no, 12,622,780.
600.
So that's 24
Yeah.
years. Now 9 million
Wow.
nine hundred eighty
986,000.
six thousand is 18, or it's close to 19 years. Yeah.
Close to 19 years, right?
So
Yeah.
Michael's been
Yeah.
working
So,
a little bit less than since I was born.
born.
And it's crazy, man. When you convert it to minutes, seconds, months, days.
hmm
Um, I feel like it's a lot of people do that, but it's like, it's really what it comes down to. It's seconds and minutes, and everybody shares that time. It's like the whole
Yeah.
thing about a rich person and a poor person. At the end of the day, that's one thing we all have in common. And how do we make the most of it, kind of thing, right?
hmm
Um,
Yeah.
24. It's a weird number because freaking, what is the average life expectancy? 80?
I think it's
So I'm a
something like
little
80
less
or
than a
yeah.
quarter
Yeah, I
done.
think it's like 80 or something like that.
Like when you put that in perspective.
Oh, isn't it?
And it's,
Yeah.
I didn't even do
Yeah. Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
yet. That's what that blows my mind. Like I just freaking, what have I accomplished? And it's like now there's a
Yeah.
responsibility on me that's like, well, life's not going to slow down. Time's not going to keep stopping. The minute's going to keep adding up. I wanted to live a
hmm
meaningful life. How do I do that? And where do I start? And what is a meaningful life, anyways?
hmm
Because at this point, I don't want to. I don't want to just keep going the same way. I feel like if you want to live a meaningful life, you're gonna have to be proactive about it. Especially at this rate, I'm like 24, and
hmm
like what do I have to show for myself? Podcast, band. It's not bad. It's like you know, I think everybody has like a mental image of what they want to be, and um, you know, if you're not on the right path, that definitely starts to discourage you.
Well, what was your, I guess, what was your old like vision of
Well,
like a
I mean,
fulfilling
so
life?
that's what I want to ponder about today. There's a different ways you can view that, right? Of what is a fulfilling life, right? I think
hmm
for myself and many others, it's one that's successful. And then, what is success then? How do you define success? That's the other question, and then
Yeah.
that's when it starts getting varied. I think most people want to be successful, but the successful usually is tied to wealth, and I can't lie and say that wouldn't be nice. I mean, who wouldn't love a little wealth? I mean, I think wealth is definitely a part of it, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like the whole saying about wealth and too much money won't make you happy. Money can't buy happiness, kind of thing.
hmm
Um, I don't know. For me, what I'm coming to learn is providing happiness for others and giving meaning to others is fulfilling to me. Um, but it has to be like I have to be content doing it. I cannot be happy doing that. Like if I'm serving people, like forget I can go work at retail and be serving people and making people happy, but would that make me happy? No. So it has to be something I love that
Yeah.
helps others, and that'll make me happy. And I think that's pure, and I think that works. I mean, that's not the same for everybody. But for me, that's a fulfilling life, I think. But I don't know. I mean, it varies upon person to person, right? So, what about you? Like, what would you consider a fulfilling life? I mean, we can answer it over
I don't know.
time,
I
but
never really like.
like from what you've,
Yeah. I don't know. Growing up, the idea of, I guess, like a life fulfilled was you know, the cookie cutter, uh, job, family, wife, kids,
yeah,
and like a dog. So it's kind of like, like the picturesque family type of thing, where it's just like, well, getting to a point where you feel like you've invested enough time in yourself to where you kind of graduate to the level of
mm,
investing time into others. So everyone's kind of, especially, I don't know if it's even like a more like recent, like more of like a today's times type of thing or something like that, but a lot of more people are kind of like, oh, I don't want to get into a relationship, or I don't want to be committed or anything, be like too early or whatever, or really hesitant about getting into a relationship. um where, and it's like, because it's like there's so many more things I want to do. I want to do all these things. I want to travel. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it's just like, um, there is no, there's no. This is one of the cases where it's just like there's no foolproof kind of like definitive answer for it. Oh, what's the best course of action? Because it's like you start rushing into things. You don't really, especially with a lot of self doubt or doubting yourself along the way, and trying to force yourself to kind of like be enthusiastic about things, or be happy about things, or how they're going. Um, you'll end up not just hurting the people around you. You might not even hurt the people around you, but you'll definitely end up just hurting yourself a lot. So I think one of the, like, a big key there is to make sure that you, in and of yourself, feel like you've done as much as you've wanted to do, or at least a good majority of what you've wanted to do, before you start thinking about, goals and kind of like aspirations of like the idea of being with someone, or the idea of like having kids, and even if it's like just having a pet, having like a dog or a cat. It's just like, this is now, this isn't just a solo show. This is now become an investment of like your time and energy into, something else, someone else, other people. um but I don't know, that was like, growing up, like I said, just the idea of the whole family thing, like that to me was a life fulfilled, and it still is. I haven't really, that hasn't changed. The only difference is that now I understand more of like, um, the journey between, um, you know, that kind of like childhood vision and the adult reality, and it's just like the journey between is really intense.
mm,
um, so so I mean, there's a lot there, I guess, like to unpack, just in general, of like how to approach the journey. But ultimately, that's how I viewed it back then.
mm,
That's how I still view it now, where it's like that's the goal. That's to me is a life fulfilled for me. But in general, um, I don't know. The life fulfilled would, I guess, be something where it's just like I said, when you as an individual feel like you've gotten to a place where you've put enough time and energy and kind of self love into you, and decide to, take the necessary steps in order to,
mm.
potentially share that with other
I
people. And that,
um
yeah.
I definitely agree with that because I think for me myself I feel that that's how I it's one of the goals I want to do, be a family man kind of thing. But I do agree that having being self fulfilled before you find someone is definitely important. because you don't want to burden them with the what ifs, right? Like, what if I'd done this before I'd gotten married, right? I think that's a big point for
Mm-hmm.
me, even in general, is if I'm on my deathbed, I don't want to be one of those guys that like say, "Oh, I wish I did this or I wish I did that." Like the people that regret on their deathbed, the old people that are like regretful. I don't want to have that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think a life fulfilled is one where you don't have any regrets. I mean, there's obviously going to be regrets, but
Mm-hmm.
the less the better, I guess. Um, the less the better.
So I mean, I guess at this point in your life, on your own personal scale, how fulfilled do you feel? Like for like the trajectory or like the long term plan that you
Mm.
like have.
Um, Definitely very unfulfilled. Um, and I can look at that in two ways. I can be very, very upset with it that I haven't done anything. There's a little anecdote with Julius Caesar looking at the statue of like Alexander the Great, and he was like freaking pissed because he's like at 23 or some age, 21, 23. Alexander the Great conquered like half the world, a quarter of the world. Julius Caesar's upset because he hasn't reached that, right? And I can look at it
Mm.
that way. On the other hand, I can say this is like the stepping stones to me becoming where I want to be in life, And that's how I'm going to do it because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and Julius Caesar ended up becoming great, you know. But everything it runs it in its own time, right? Everything runs its own course, and I think I will be fulfilled if I keep working at it, being proactive with it. I am unfulfilled now, but I think I'm building the foundation to have a fulfilled life. If that makes sense, that's where I'm at right now. Because I'm trying to. It's like what you were saying, like the whole transitioning from childhood to adulthood, and that whole tumultuous period. It's like it's going into adulthood, growing up, and I think that's where I'm at right now. Trying to figure out what's a life worth living. Um, um, it's weird because like as a kid, it's like being rich and famous is like one of those life fulfilling, amazing things. And I think I still hold a
Yeah.
piece of that now. But then there's the other side of me. And I think I mentioned this during the goals pod too. It's like, having a family is such a alluring thing now. Just being a family man and raising kids, it's definitely a really beautiful thing. Um, I don't know. So I don't know. I had like two examples. I mean, I guess I can compare with you right now. It's like I don't know. I guess I already know your answer, but if it's between like being rich and dying at like 30 years old, or being 80 years old and living a mediocre life.
I'll take the life of mediocrity. Without a
But
doubt, I'll
you've
take the
touched a
life of
lot of lives
mediocrity.
with the rich one, and you made a huge impact, and your legacy is going to live on for who knows how long. You'll be remembered. So, or some
Um,
80-year-old guy that nobody. I mean, a couple people like you. I mean, but you lived a pretty basic life. You've done what you need to, I guess. I don't know.
but I think really what it comes down to is that like, for all intents and purposes, the fame, the riches, and like the quote unquote the legacy that you leave behind, yeah, you can inspire or touch the hearts of many, but it gets to a point where it's just like, oh, well, if you haven't inspired as many people as like a certain celebrity has, then your life was kind of meaningless. Like you're really downplaying just like just like like um
Like the
the weight
impact.
and the
Yeah.
significance, the overall the importance of what life is, by quantifying, how many, like, for how long would your legacy live on, for like, how many people did you impact? And it's really easy to say, like, oh, if I've at least, like, made one or two other people happy, it definitely makes it all worth it. But to the point that we were talking about earlier, you want to do things like that where ultimately you want to be able to impact the lives of others, or, for the better. But at what cost, though? If it comes at a severe detriment, to yourself, maybe before stepping out and trying to, I guess, help others, you're gonna have to do a
Mm,
little bit of self-help first, because the best way you can help others is first making sure that, at least for the most
yeah.
part, you're stable. If you don't have your own footing, how can you expect to help others with theirs? And I think that, if everyone takes even just, the small amount of time to, somewhat, stabilize that bedrock beneath themselves, the amount of help and the amount of outreach that they can do, it'll be much stronger. It'll be far more. It'll reach out much further. And I think that ultimately, a quote unquote life of mediocrity. Why is it mediocre? Because
Yeah.
you're not famous, because, like, you're not the big name. And it's just like, I don't think that that's a mediocre life. I just think that it's a life. And so long as, if you've done everything you could to, be the best you can, obviously there are always going to be faults, but so long as you've done everything and tried your hardest when you could, tried to be the best you could be, while also constantly learning and growing, I think, I don't think it can get much richer and fuller than that. I think that's more than enough to, when the time comes, just kind of look back and say, yeah,
Mm.
this was pretty great.
No, 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 that makes sense. That
Again,
makes sense. I mean, I
just
agree with
that's
that.
me though. Yeah.
No, because I mean, the whole idea of mediocrity is definitely more subjective than anything. If you can touch the lives genuinely and have a huge impact on just one or two people in your life, that can mean so much more than a celebrity touching millions of lives. Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that stuff is very vapid, right? You can oh, I can say Michael Jackson's been like had an impact on my life barely. I didn't know the guy personally. He didn't change my life. He had a couple of good songs. Was like, at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, who is he? He's not someone who's important to me. Hasn't talked to me. Hasn't actually sat down, cared about me, talked to me on a daily basis. As opposed to someone who's you know there for me every single day. I can mention my sister, I guess, who's there for me all the time. Like, I mean, I don't know, man. I definitely do agree that um yeah, it's
Taking that life of 80 years, that mediocre 80-year life versus the rich blazing 30.
I I don't know. I'm gonna be honest. I know inherently that the 80-year-old life is better, but there's still a small part of me that's like, maybe if I'm making an impact at that grand of a scale, I don't know. But I don't know. That's just one small part of me. But I know here's the thing. But I also know that, like, the whole self help thing, right? Like, seeking help for yourself. If you don't do it, eh, all the happiness that you've created for these people kind of cancels out if you end up like killing yourself or something, right? Or you overdose on drugs, or
Yeah,
however
it's
celebrities end up dying, right?
I think it's a really tragic thing when things like that happen, because it's, again, it's like, maybe you do have, again, the resources, the utility, to be able to, help many people, and from a celebrity standpoint, charities and things like that, foundations, organizations, all those things. And that's fantastic. It's more than the average person will be able to do, like
What about like
a
Martin
few
Luther King,
lifetimes
right? He
over.
never
You have
got to have like that long, fulfilling life, but the amount of self-sacrifice he did for a cause that's greater than himself, and
Mm-hmm.
having died so young, the amount of sacrifice. That's why it kind of comes back to like what I'm confused about is the whole happiness aspect of it, right? Like, part of me is like, oh, I have to be happy
Mm.
in order to give other people happiness, right? Because if I'm not happy, how am I going to make someone else happy, right? But at the other end, this people literally suffering, but they still manage to make someone happy at the end of the day. And I think that's, I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think I don't know, from my
They got to put on
perspective
that
it's kind of
face.
like yeah, when you're dealing with so much, when you're dealing with that amount of pain or just internal struggle, I'm not I'm going to try and avoid using like hyperbole. um, the best course of action, whether, medically speaking, scientifically, whatever it is, like the best course of action is if you are suffering from issues, mental health issues or emotional issues, mental health issues, things like that, then the best course of action is to seek, professional help. That's
But
all
like
over
this,
the place. That's everywhere. There are
I've read
organizations
a
and everything like
story
that
about
for it.
actual like army counselor, a guy who's actually counsels people with suicide and PTSD. He helped countless people's lives. He ended up killing
Hmm.
himself.
Yeah.
I mean, so then
So
where does it stand? I mean, he helped so many people, but was it a life fulfilled? You know, and it's
I
like
that's
that's where I'm.
well, I again, from what I was saying earlier, that's the immediate call for help, like do it, call for help. But it doesn't stop people, your internal struggle, the things, the pain, and everything that you as an individual are going through. If you're still, again, blessed with the opportunity, with the ability to help others, you're going to continue doing that, because so long as those are what your intentions are, to help others. There are so many instances where it's just like, again, somebody who's helped and who's inspired, hundreds, thousands, millions, and it's just like, they passed away, and it turns out that, again, they passed away from extreme circumstances, and it's a really tragic thing that happened. And it's just like, oh, they spread so much happiness. All it was happiness, but ultimately they weren't. And the big conundrum about it all is just that, um, you know, like you said, the question always just kind of lingers: was that life worth living? Like, uh, it's always going to be in the eye of the
And you were
beholder.
saying at the
But
funerals too. It's like, oh
I think
well, we should appreciate the time that they were here and the amount of joy they brought people. And it's like,
yeah,
but they killed themselves. I don't know. Like,
yeah. So
kind of just made me
I
sad.
the way
I don't
I
know if
the
it
way
cancels out.
I yeah, no, the way I kind of view it, like, is it's you can't take away the impact that they had on the people around them, and you can't take that away. You can't strip them of, the good that they did. The thing that you look back on ultimately is, the unfortunate circumstances at hand.
Hmm.
This was the outcome for the person. But, for as sad and as tragic as that instance was, you know was it a life fulfilled? Ultimately, it's up to them, and you're not going to be able to know.
But
We won't be able to know.
what do
But
you think
the
though?
best you the bet the best you could hope for in that instance is that, for as much help and aid and inspiration that they've given to others, that it did impact them, that it did impact them for the better, that it did help them, that it did resonate with them, that they did feel some sort of fulfillment from that to a degree. And my personal, I guess, opinion on it is, um, I still think that it was a life. I still think that there was plenty of
Mm.
life there that was fulfilled, and unfortunately, it was cut too short. And you know, in a case of where something's self inflicted like that, it's just like it becomes, again, that tragic instance of like, oh man, like if only more people had known, then all the people that were helped by this person, would have supported them in getting the help that they needed. It's just kind of like the whole, like, when you receive, you just want to give. You receive blessings, you want to share those blessings with others. And if you know that the person who's been helping you, been mentoring you, inspiring you, is struggling, the first call to action in you is, I want to help them because they've helped me. And you know that all being said, there's definitely, to me, that was a life full of fulfillments that was
Mm.
unfortunately cut far too short. So that's the way, I'll look at something like that. Um, but yeah, again, yeah,
Because it's
these are
like
all. This is. I know this is a
how
really touchy subject, but
it
it's all
definitely is,
personal.
but I think it's important to talk about it because especially when you're trying to figure out what you want to do, right? With your life, like I mean, for me, right? It's like how far do you sacrifice yourself? I guess you wouldn't want to sacrifice yourself where it detriments your mental health, right? There's that limit. But
Mm-hmm.
then I the first thing that I think of, especially well, I guess you can look at it in two ways, right? So in one way you can think about parents, right? Some parents, they sacrifice their happiness for the sake of their children, and that's you're not always gonna
Mm-hmm.
be happy, but in the grand scheme of things, you want the best for your child, and you'll be happy because of that, right? But it's not necessarily that. Like sometimes it might not even be the case, but in that moment, you put their happiness over yours, and I guess that's uh kind of in line with what you were saying, but giving is part of like providing is part of a meaningful and fulfilling life. Um, not necessarily being happy all the time, right? Um, so I guess it's not happiness isn't entirely the whole part of a fulfilling life, isn't it? It's definitely more so providing and giving meaning to the next or to someone else or the next generation, right? Um,
Well, I think the important thing here is the fact that,
there's more to it than
ultimately,
just self
um,
happiness and self fulfillment. I think.
yeah, so that's really it. That the a huge factor in all of this is the fact that, what is your personal definition of,
Mm,
of being happy. It's not an equivalent definition of being fulfilled. Happiness and
mm,
fulfillment aren't the same thing. They don't exist as being the same thing. You can have a fulfilling life, and be miserable. You can have a happy life and
mm.
feel terribly unfulfilled. But typically, they'll correlate. They'll kind of
Yeah, I
go
think
hand in hand, I should say.
if you live a fulfilling
Um,
life, I think you'll be happy.
you tend
Mm,
to be more to there's a
yeah.
tendency to be happier. But in the case of, what we were talking about, the example we were talking about earlier, is that, like, from the world's perspective, your life
Mm,
is incredibly fulfilling. You must be so happy, but then tragedy strikes, and then the world realizes that, oh my gosh, like, they weren't happy. But
they had
how
everything.
couldn't they be if their life was so fulfilling, and they had everything from a personal perspective, from, helping others perspective, like, why were they not happy? And there's so much more involved with happiness inherently for an individual than there is when then versus fulfillment. And I think that there's a lot more work at play, because happiness, fulfillment, personally, you can become more fulfilled and do more and be more productive and help more, via action. Happiness, though, it's not, you can't just go up to someone and be like, put a
Mm.
smile on, just be happy today. It's not something so actionable. It's not something that can so quickly be changed or adjusted via direct action. There's so much more at play. It's the mind,
Mm.
it's the mind, it's the way you think, it's your mentality, it's the way you feel, it's your cumulative set of emotions. And it's not as attainable and maintainable as fulfillment, or a
Um,
sense of fulfillment. So it's kind of like how, I see it
I'm just
from
thinking of
from
this
that
now,
angle.
like an alternative perspective, right? I was reading. I saw this video yesterday. It was about Well, the quote was, "Comparison is the thief of happiness." And there was another quote, "Life without expectations equals happiness." So basically, you comparing yourself to others obviously is going to make you unhappy, right? Or like if you have expectations and you don't reach them, you're obviously going to be unhappy. If you have no expectations, you're going to be happy. So maybe the idea of um, being unhappy because you're unfulfilled is a good thing, because it motivates you to towards being fulfilled, right? Being toward having a fulfilling life. I mean, like what you said, like what I mentioned was Julius Caesar being upset about that, and eventually he ended up being emperor of Rome. And I think channeling that negativity and that upset uh, feeling can push you towards greatness, but to what cost? I don't know. But I think there's a bit of it's a struggle. It's a struggle for sure. I remember like there's one with Michael Jordan. Like he didn't make his sophomore year basketball team apparently, and he was so upset.
Hmm.
But his mother told him to keep practicing, and he did, and eventually, we know how he turned out. So I guess there's a place for unhappiness. Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking alternatives here, right? Like right now, I feel unfulfilled, but that's not gonna, you know, make me do anything drastic. I think it's just stepping stone. That's how I feel about it. Um, I think being unfulfilled, knowing you're unfulfilled, I think is the first step. Because I think it's good to definitely put things in perspective, right? Like I can say I'm fulfilled. I can say, I mean, I've lived this long. I haven't died. I have a job. I went to college for a little bit. You can say you're fulfilled. You
Hmm.
actually have a job. You're making good money. You can get whatever you want. You have a girlfriend. Like you're set. Like you can't say you're not fulfilled. I mean, that's actually a good question. How do you feel? Do you feel fulfilled at this point in your life?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel
Okay.
fulfilled. So many.
So far,
What is that? An alliteration? Feel Definitely feel
definitely feel
fulfilled.
fulfilled.
Say that 5 times fast. But um, yeah. I would have to agree. Yeah. um,
Yeah. So that's the
yeah.
thing. You can say, "Oh, yeah, I live a fulfilling life," but I think if you in your head have an image of where you want to be, and you're not there yet, you're gonna feel unfulfilled. And I think that's a good thing because it pushes you towards being the best you want to be. Uh, I think.
No, I don't think that there's anything wrong um with playing off of, I guess,
Yeah.
the negative, and using it to propel the positive. I don't think there's necessarily much wrong with respect to that what I just said, to this
Mm.
situation and similar situation like it. Again, the negative here being that, like, oh, I don't feel like I don't feel that great with, my progress in life so far. I'm in my,
Mm-hmm.
early to mid 20s, and I don't know, things just really don't seem to be going in the way that I had hoped. But, you'll feel unfulfilled, you might not be the happiest, but using that, as a key motivator to get to, you know, halfway, 75% or 100% to where you expect it to be, maybe even beyond that. Maybe you're just going to blow that goal and expectation completely out of the water because you're using that as a motivator. And in so many instances, I think it can get, it's obviously very easy to get bogged down and allow negative, like just negativity to weigh you down. But if you're able to, and it takes a lot of strength, it takes a lot of due diligence, and it takes a very strong will to consistently turn the tide on that
Mm-hmm.
negativity to help push yourself for betterment, then by all means do that. Use the bad, use the crap as a motivation to be better. And I don't think a life, you know I don't think like you can really say any. There's always going to be the question of like, oh, am I actually really fulfilled? Do I really feel fulfilled in my life? And the definitive answer is that there is no definitive line of
I think if
this
you've
fulfillment.
accomplished goals.
I think you can say accomplishing goals is great and everything, but the ultimate, yeah, a personal endeavor, I guess, of mine, and just something that I just kind of keep in my head is that, like, it's not possible, but the goal in the back of my head is that, well, each day that I'm alive, I'm going to try and be a little
Mm,
bit better than yesterday. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be try and be a little bit better, of like a person per se, but I'm going to try and get better. I'm going to try and just be better in
mm,
some facet of my life. Even if it means that I'm going to write my reports starting tomorrow and from every day on at least 1 minute faster each day up until I can't do it any faster anymore. But guess what? There are going to be days where I get distracted. There are going to be days where I'm behind. I get bogged down by other work. I'm just not able to accomplish that goal. But it's a long-standing, never-ending goal, and it's an open-ended one that instead of having like a definitive finish line, it's about just a consistent
mm.
set of milestones that you keep yourself accountable for, but also give yourself enough flexibility to understand that, hey, life happens. But it doesn't mean that I
Mm.
haven't lived a fulfilling life. It doesn't mean that if I like the things that I have done, you know um, are not as fulfilling as I thought them to be. Everything that you do, that you have done, everything that you currently do, and everything you will do, you know, they're all going to be subjective to the differences and opinions that you're going to end up having at the various stages in your life. And I think the most important thing, or one of the most important things that we as people can do, is to make sure that we maintain in ourselves that long-standing goal of just
I
being a
think
little
that's
bit better
definitely
each
one way
day.
of going about it. Because I feel like with the celebrities that we talked about, the many different types, um, they reach their goals, and it's like now what, right? As opposed to having like these
Hmm.
open-ended goals, like you said, that you can keep striving for, um, something to keep you occupied. I guess for the long run, that's definitely I don't know, that's one way of
Hmm.
going about it.
I mean, especially now in a day and age of like, influencers and the advent and the rise and popularity of social media and content creation, the digital world. It's just like the mentality is, the work harder mentality. And I know we mentioned this back when we were talking about this
I think
particular
everything ties
podcast about
together.
goals and everything.
All the subjects that we talked
Um,
about kind of line up with this
yeah,
episode.
yeah. And so I know what I said back then, that like, just keep going, keep working, keep hustling, and just keep moving. But in and of itself, it's a very workaholic attitude. But life isn't that easy, and most people, the majority of people, almost all people, are just not that much of a
Mm.
robot to be able to just constantly work and work without ceasing. And like I mentioned, the balance here is the same theme that applies from there is the same thing that
Mm.
applies here. There's a fine balancing act that no one will ever be perfect at executing. But again, the goal isn't to be perfect at it and never, and finish it, you know. The goal is just to
Mm.
get a little bit better at it every single day that you're able to. And I think that helps prolong, you know, that internal feeling of fulfillment. And overall, it's just, the general perspective of, how are you going to approach the goals, the milestones, no matter what your timelines are, even if there aren't definitive timelines, how are you going to approach that with what sort of, I guess, mental, capacity and what sort of attitude are you going to approach those things? But, again, if it becomes a very difficult thing to think that way, and it's because it's a very strenuous thing to do. It is, particularly if you're bogged down by, things that are out of your control, things that you in and of yourself need help with. And that at that point is when it's not about quitting. It's not about saying that I can't, I'm a loser. I can't do this on my own. I suck. Other people can do everything on their own, but I can't do simple things on my own. And it's not about that. It's about considering your own personal circumstances. Do you need help? Or are you able to do this alone? Do you need a support
Mm.
group? What do you need? And when you think about what you need, then you're going to start slowly but surely building that plan up, building those, hopefully effective means, those positive means to get better. And again, the long-standing idea of
Mm.
just getting a little better every day. And it's not always about you. It's about a community or world around you. And if you want to participate in that world and you want to give the most that you can, don't forget about yourself in the adventure of doing
Mm.
that. Always be kind to yourself.
I
You
think,
know, if you're gonna
yeah,
considering everyone
yeah.
else.
I know Danny mentioned this in I think the routine or the goal, one of them, that like the whole idea of like
Yeah.
stopping, either the workaholic one, cease stopping for a little bit, so that way you can move forward, because we're not robots, like you said. We need breaks, and in the long run, stopping for now can help you move further than someone who's gonna eventually be burnt out and not do anything for a whole year, right? Take that 2 weeks off of mental
Mm-hmm.
health, boom, you're right back in it. As opposed to freaking get a flat
Yeah.
tire. So that's how I see it. It's like that, like we mentioned. I think it's like the journey, the whole end goal, is just cross the finish line with the least amount of regrets. Getting a little better, like you said, every single day, and providing meaning to everyone you meet. Is definitely important. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I I I agree. Um,
I don't know. Like, I guess at the end, when all is said and done, what is your next? What's your next step? What are your next steps? Because, well, I guess this is a good point to say, like, you know, this is season finale for this, and almost most likely like
mm,
series finale. And that being said, it's just like, you know, in and of itself, this was a great project. This was definitely something that had, plenty of ups and downs throughout, but it's not it's not going to be something that, oh, you only look back at for the positives. It's going to be, at least from the way I think about it, something I look back at also from like the negatives. Like, what were the bad parts? What didn't work? What was, what kind of failed and crumbled versus like what did work? And it's just like, from my perspective, like the next step after this, in the life of, me, it's just kind of like, all right, well, learning from this opportunity that I had, and instead of treating it as just like a working professional opportunity, being able to kind of dip my toes in this thing, but, you know, actually utilizing it as motivation and inspiration to, maybe most likely produce something else down the line, and do other things, and just keep trekking down this new route that I've discovered in my own personal life. So that's kind of how I view it. Um, but I don't know, where do you stand? Like, do you have any next step plans or goals, like, as a result of this being
Mm.
done?
Um, I'm definitely appreciative of the opportunity to, have done this. I think it's been definitely a learning experience for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, do I wish that I mean, this I wish it could have gone longer, but at the same time it's like I think it's ran its course, and I I'm definitely looking forward to more like you said, more creative endeavors, like you said, trying out new things. And looking at the good and bad is definitely important, because you learn from that, and you know apply that to whatever endeavors you plan on doing in the future, and you know end up making even better stuff. So I'm hopeful for the future for both of
Mm-hmm.
us. um it's and
Yeah.
I guess for his goals, it's for the long term in my life, I definitely agree. Hopefully I find myself in some sort of field that helps a lot of people, um even if it's just like we mentioned, just one or two people in a huge impact. I think that's definitely important, just for my sake. um Going into some sort of route that does that, and I think I try to do that with this pod too. I don't know how it could have gone, but I think that's very important to me. It's for a fulfilling life, is trying to help people, make them happy. But yeah, live and learn, keep moving forward.
Yeah,
Um,
no, definitely.
and yeah, just I think that those are good points that we mentioned. Getting a little better each day, having open-ended goals, living a life with no regrets, providing happiness to others and providing meaning to others, and you know, being kind to yourself too at the end of the day, because what's the point if you end up killing yourself?
Yeah, yeah, no, no. But definitely, in all seriousness, yeah, it's true. And um, that, keeping all those things in line, and then, obviously, I can't stress this enough. Like I've been stressing throughout, it's just like, if you find yourself in a point in your life where, you feel like you genuinely can't do it alone, and there's more to it than meets the eye. If you find yourself in trouble and struggling internally, you know, reach out, seek out help, whether it's from a loved one, a friend, or, obviously, definitely, in the best case, professional. Um, do do what you can to, again, strive for that goal of trying to be a little bit better each day, and be kind to yourself in the process. Um, but yeah, so, like, I know it's always funny, like, trying to, like, close out things, like, even like in a presentation and stuff like that, when you're finally at the end and you're kind of like, oh man, I had all my material set, and I don't even know how to, like, wrap it up. But in this case, I feel like I'm a little bit more prepared than like I
Mm.
have been in any presentation so far that I've given in, like, college or high school. And that, um, just a huge thank you to everyone who's listened. Um, you know, beyond appreciative of, the support, the likes, the follows, the comments, and just the all around love that we felt, in doing this project, and in producing this podcast. Um, but like we mentioned, it doesn't mean that the podcast might be done, and a chapter closed, but it's doesn't mean that individually you and I aren't going are going to stop doing our own individual stuff. So you guys can, if you haven't already, follow both of us on the socials. Jeff, your tag, and your band, and anything else that comes up. Follow Jeff's page, follow my page. All that information is always in the descriptions for the podcast, and you can also find that, in the YDB page. But yeah, no. So here's to the future. Here's to what it holds, and hopefully
Yeah.
all for the better. So just like always, great stuff, man.